Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Second Act Cat RN. And today I wanted to talk about something that I've heard other nurses talk about, and that is worries that nurses have after they retire or as they're contemplating retiring. And retiring, when I talk about a second act, that can also include retirement. That is your second act if that's the route you choose to go, or if you decide you want to work somewhere else part-time or full-time. That's your second act. So in the sense that retirement is the second act, the things that nurses worry about are similar to what other people worry about, but there's an added component because we've seen what, like the low down, in the trenches kind of medical issues that people can have at an older age. We've helped treat these patients, we've taken care of these patients, and now we are one of them potentially. So we worry about becoming a patient just like the patients we've had. We worry about becoming, we know what can happen when we get to a certain point with an illness. For example, dementia. When we take care of patients with dementia, we know the progression, pretty much. We know how it progresses. We know signs and symptoms, and we worry about developing dementia ourselves. So because we've seen it, it plays on our mind a little differently. We kind of know too much. You know that you may develop terrible memory loss and not be able to recognize family, not be able to have the independence that you used to have. So becoming a patient instead of the nurse that you used to be, that's a big worry for nurses. I know it is for me. I think about that a lot. And I think it's because I've seen so much. So we also worry about who will advocate for us when we become hospitalized or incapacitated in some sort. We see that patients in nursing homes, for example, have been put there because their family members are unable to take care of them. So they've moved them into a skilled nursing facility or assisted living or long-term care. And thinking about the things that we see in those facilities, in those units with these older patients, we think about that and that could be on the horizon. So it's constantly there that you're thinking about. And there's a part of you that's like, I don't want to develop these issues because I've seen how these patients were and what they went through. So besides health and aging, another issue is finances, because as a nurse, you can potentially make excellent money. I've not been in that category, but I've made really good money. But you can't make that kind of money when you retire. Retirement is like a portion of what you made, and you worry about being able to make ends meet. A lot of nurses have a particular lifestyle based on their income, and my lifestyle is pretty simple. It's nothing fancy, but I do worry about if I'm able to keep it up. It's a basic lifestyle. I don't have a lot of money, so I don't indulge, but we do want to live the same lifestyle and do the same things that we're currently doing before we retire. So that's one of the things we think about. Because we know long-term care costs are pretty exorbitant at times. And so we worry about that as well. What if I have to be put into a nursing home or an assisted living? And what if I can't take care of myself and my family can't help? What will happen to me if I'm in a facility somewhere? Do I have the money to take care of that? It is rather expensive, and that's something that people don't always plan for. You hope for the best, but you don't always plan for. So it's something we need to start planning for before we get to this age, because chances are we're going to have to be in a facility somewhere if we have no one to help take care of us. So we also worry about the rising costs of health care. Should we be dealing with issues as we're aging, medical issues, heart issues, dialysis, for example? people that might fall and break a hip and then they're immobile and they have to go to physical therapy. So a bunch of different issues regarding finances is huge, especially on my list, but on a lot of retired nurses on their list of things that they worry about. So the next thing that I think about a lot is loss of identity. And we've worked as a nurse for all these years. Our identity has been tied up in our career. Our career takes up the majority of our time. And when we retire, or even semi-retire, you kind of lose that identity as a nurse because now you're doing normal everyday things. You're not working possibly in a nursing capacity. Even though you have the knowledge, you're not working there anymore. And it kind of knocks you down a few notches. It makes you think, what is your value? What's your worth? Because my value was taking care of patients. My value was making sure they had quality of life. My value was having a job, regular job, where I was able to contribute to society and make enough money to be able to pay my bills and live my life. So when you have lost that identity, it's kind of hard on your, I don't want to say ego in a bad way. There are people that may have that ego that's very large, but you don't have to have this humongous ego, but it does play on what little bit of ego is there. And that's a natural occurrence. That's a natural thing. We have an identity for an extended period of time, and then we lose that identity when we quit that job. So having a loss of identity, feeling invisible, feeling like you're not in a respected role anymore because you're retired, you're at home, you might be traveling, you might not be traveling, but your role has changed. And that's a big deal for nurses, a lot of people, but I'm speaking from a nurse's perspective, and I deal with that. I do deal with that. Who am I if I'm not a nurse anymore? We are people, we have an identity, but in our minds we don't. We feel like we've lost that identity. The next thing is moral distress and lingering trauma. So we remember traumatic instances with patients. I remember I worked in the ER in a rural facility, and I remember seeing things that you didn't really want to see, I still recall with great clarity these episodes with these patients who were very critical, and some did not make it, some did. So we worry about that. We have those traumatic thoughts still. It's kind of like PTSD. Those linger with us, and we have guilt about maybe making a mistake on that patient or with that patient, or regretting that maybe we did whatever we did to take care of that patient. Maybe we could have done something more to help them get better. We think about systemic failures, missed signs with patients, things that we should have caught. I remember at my very first job at this hospital, not in the ER, but on the med-surg floor, I had a patient, one of my very first patients, and I noticed she had declined. Her blood pressure had dropped, and it kept dropping. It was trending downward. So I went to the doctor who was there, and I said I was worried about this patient. I was concerned because her blood pressure was dropping, and I just had this gut feeling. So he checked on her. He decided to transfer her out to a higher skilled hospital in a more metropolitan area. And so found out that on her way, when they were transporting her to that hospital about an hour away or so, she'd passed away. And whatever she had that made her blood pressure fall, whatever she was going through, I caught it. But what if I didn't? She would have passed away on my watch in the room where she was. So, we worry about losing that ability or that cognitive function to be able to catch things like that as we age, at an older age. So in retirement, we do worry about those things, like that we may have affected differently if we didn't do such and such a certain way. Another change that we worry about, or something else that we worry about, is loneliness and social changes. And I talked about this in one of my other videos about the elephant in the room for elderly people or older people. One of those is loneliness that they don't talk about. But as a retired nurse, your social circle has been your coworkers for so long, and leaving that behind, you lose, and I said this in that video, you lose those friends when you change jobs or when you quit, when you retire. So we worry about, will I have any friends? It's another video as well, how to make friends as an older adult. But we lose that sense of belonging, and we lose that social interaction, I guess you could say, because we're now at home, we're retired, we're doing other things, and we feel kind of left out. So it makes us feel a little bit isolated socially. And those are huge issues that can lead to depression, anxiety, weight gain, a whole lot of issues, memory loss just from being depressed. And so we've got to keep our social circle somewhat intact so we can still have connections with people. That's a huge thing. And I do worry about that, especially since I had a good friend of mine move away and I don't see her very often. So we feel the same as losing friends as people who aren't in nursing and they've retired and they've lost their friendships because you've been with those people day in and day out for years and years and years, and now you're not. So it does make a huge difference in our thinking and our self-worth. So another concern that we have as retired nurses is end-of-life concerns. Now, I know for me, I had worked hospice on several occasions, and at several different times in my career, and I had to explain to the family members and patients, if they were able to understand, how to fill out the advance directive forms. These are the post forms that talk about what you want done if you should not be able to make those decisions yourself. Do you want to be a DNR? Do you want to be a full code? So we think about these things. We've dealt with these things with pretty much almost all of our patients, and we are always aware whether they are a DNR or a full code. So as a retiring nurse, my thoughts about doing the post form or filling out advance directives, I know that's very important, but it took me years before I could actually fill out the form and appoint a designee as my power of attorney, because I didn't want to admit that I'm mortal, that I'm just human. Even though I taught this and I had to educate patients and their family members, I couldn't apply it to myself. I just wasn't ready yet. When my mom passed away almost 5 years ago, when I got home from seeing her after she had passed, I finally did that because it became real. I realized that we are just here for a short time and we have to get our affairs in order. So it took that for me to get to that point. So please don't let it take you that long, because we might not make that decision before the time comes. We might put it off, and then here we are, we're on our way out, and we haven't filled out any advance directives. So I'm going to just say, please do that. Please fill out your POA forms and advance directives, because when you get to the point where you can't do it, it's too late. Somebody else will have to make that decision for you, and it may not be something you wanted. If you become incapacitated and you wanted to be a DNR, you didn't want life-saving measures beyond, just normal things, then somebody may make that decision and decide to put you on a ventilator or life support, and you didn't want that. So make those decisions beforehand before you get to that point. Another thing that we worry about is regrets and what ifs. So I think about this a lot. What if I hadn't been in that particular toxic workplace? I've worked in many toxic workplaces. Pretty much everywhere is toxic. Whether you're in nursing or not, there's drama everywhere. And you wonder, if I hadn't worked in that toxic environment, would I have a different mindset? Would things be different? Would I be healthier? Would I be worse off? When we worry about, did I spend too much time working as a nurse, or not working as a nurse, but working in a facility where we saw a lot of trauma, or there was a lot of death and dying. And maybe some of those circumstances were not very pleasant to see. None are pleasant, but some stick with you and bother you a little bit more. One situation that sticks out to me was in the ER when I worked at that hospital. There was someone that was brought in for end-stage COPD, and I just kept I kept hearing him say, help me to breathe, I can't breathe. And the respiratory therapist was there doing her implementing measures. The doctor was there doing his thing. There was nothing we could do other than what they were doing to help this man breathe easier. And it didn't look good. I hated that I had to see the distress that he was having emotionally, physically, mentally. It was very hard. It was very difficult because you can't fix it. And he ended up being transported to a higher acuity facility where he got, hopefully, the care he needed. I don't know how that ended up, but I do know that it wasn't looking good when he was at our facility. So the next thing we worry about is, did my work matter in the long run? So what's our legacy? Did we leave a legacy behind that represents how we really feel and what we, really care about? Or will people forget what we did? Do they even know what we did? I'm not as worried about leaving a legacy as someone else might be. That's never been something that's crossed my mind. Like, what will they think of me when I'm gone? I'm really not here. It's not going to matter. I'm not going to worry about what they think about me when I'm gone, because what difference will that make in the long run? I won't be here to see it. So it's something that just isn't a big thing on my list. So anyway, these are thoughts that I had today that I just wanted to share, that as nurses, when we retire, we do have a lot of worries, a lot of things that we're thinking about that bother us maybe a little bit more because of the environments we've been in throughout our working career. So if any of this has helped you, please leave a comment below, and I hope that you like my channel and subscribe, share it with other nurses that you know, and take care, and I will see you on the next video.